Hi guys, it is Mr. Dave with the Ray Kitty Creation Workshop, and you are joining us for the Ray Kitty Science Project. Thanks for checking us out again. We've got some more fun science to do for you today. We're gonna touch back on some of the concepts that we've covered in some of the other videos. So if you've had a chance to watch some of the other videos, you'll say, hey, maybe I remember that concept. If you have not had a chance, check them out. We've got some previous videos that will allude to some of these ideas. I like to kind of draw the science into different aspects and different experiments and demonstrations. That way, when you remember the science, you remember a little bit more facets of that science. So we will be touching on some of the ideas from some of our other videos today. Now, if you want to join along, today we're going to mainly be working with balloons. Now, I chose balloons because around the Ray Kitty household, we are coming up on birthday season. So I've got daughters with birthdays, my wife's birthday, everybody's birthday is in like a 2-week span there. And that means there is a lot of balloons, because anytime you've got a birthday party, you've got balloons. So these are some things that you can do. Most of these, I think actually, we do have one that has a little bit of fire, so you'd want to have an adult with you for that one, and some pokey things, but these are really all pretty much things that you can do with things you have around the house. There's no big chemicals involved or acids or bases that would cause any damage, just some little pokey things because we are working with balloons and a little bit of fire. So the things that we will be using today, if you want to go get those, I have a balloon with some water in it. I have a lighter, okay. I've got some candles. Now, you don't necessarily need the candles, but whenever I'm doing demonstrations, I prefer to use a lighter like this because it usually lights. So you'll need a lighter, candles, some small little source of fire. I do have some very tiny little nuts that I got from the workshop there, so you will need some of those. You'll actually only need one. Yeah, there you go. And so these guys here, you'll need one of those. And I have some lemons, okay? Now these are 4 different experiments, so if you don't have all of these things, that's okay. But I have some lemons. I have a knife to open the lemon or to cut the lemon. I have a little bit of Vaseline. And I have some skewers, okay? Skewers are just long, pokey sticks. If you don't have these skewers at home, you can use a toothpick or something like that. But skewers are just a bit more dramatic when you're doing it. Now, time permitting, we will get into a little bit of our baking soda and vinegar that you definitely have in your little Ray Kitty science pack. If you followed along with any of these videos, you'll have your baking soda and vinegar. So we're going to start out with something very simple, just kind of showing balloons a little bit. I have here a balloon, okay? So I'm going to blow up the balloon. If you recall, this balloon is filling with something, right? We are filling this balloon with stinky Dave breath, okay? So this is happy birthday. Here's a sack of my breath. Here's a balloon. Now, I'm filling this with normal air from my lungs. If you've got a pump, however you fill that, that's fine. So we filled this balloon with air. I'm going to go ahead and tie this one off, okay? So we've got a balloon, regular old balloon, just filled with normal air. Now, when you're thinking of balloons and you're thinking of science, usually the first one that comes to mind is static electricity. Now, I waited off on that because I am going to have some specific static demonstrations in a future episode. We'll be doing a lot about static. So this one here, yes, there are a lot of things you can do with static. I really have a hard time. If I rub it on my head, it just goes, it doesn't quite, load up with that static. But we won't be doing static today. So if you're thinking static, make sure you tune in later because we will be doing that one, okay? Now, if you are afraid of balloons popping, then some of these demonstrations, you may want to kind of hold them far away from you. I know me, I'm a jumpy little guy, and so I will, so if you hear me, scream and jump and things like that, that's because I am also afraid of balloons popping. But we will be popping some just for the sake of demonstration. Now, we'll start off with that popping that we were talking about, okay? I'm going to move some of these balloons out of the way. The other thing that I don't know if I mentioned when I was talking about some of the materials you'll need, but I have some thumbtacks, okay? These are what you'll use to stick little things to the wall or to, if you have posters in your room, you may be using these thumbtacks to put those posters up. Now, I've got this balloon and this little bitty sharp object, okay? So you may know what's going to happen when you have a sharp object and a balloon, right? If we insert the sharp object into the balloon, what are we going to get? We're going to get pow, pop, right? So our balloon is going to pop. So what has happened there, a little bit of the science on that one, is our balloon, because that material, that latex was nice and stretched out, when our thumbtack poked in there, okay, it broke a little tiny hole and tore that latex. So when it tears that latex, latex is a polymer, like we spoke about earlier, but when you tear that latex, then it ends up, that balloon will pop, okay? So we'll see if I can do it just in my fingers here. When we poke a little hole in that latex, that little bitty hole can expand very easily and pop, right? Because that balloon's nice and stretched out, okay? So what we saw was this thumbtack pop that balloon very easily. So what's kind of fun is a whole bunch of thumbtacks, okay? So now here, instead of one thumbtack, I have a whole lot of thumbtacks. So we're going to blow up another balloon. Now, if I pass out and you see me disappear behind the table, just give me a minute. I'll get back up. I'll be okay. Okay, so we have another balloon here that we've inflated. So this is another bag of Mr. Dave's Stinky Breath. And now we are going to press this on a bunch of thumbtacks, okay? So what we have, when we did this one before, we had that single area that had a lot of tension, a lot of pressure on a very small area. Now we have a whole bunch of these here, so this should pop way louder, right? Well, maybe not. Let's see what happens. So we're going to put this onto these thumbtacks. We got a super cool close-up there. As I'm pushing on these thumbtacks, I can push it down. I'm pushing pretty hard. I'm getting a little bit nervous, but I pushed pretty hard on those thumbtacks there, and it didn't pop. Okay? So what happened here is we've spread out our surface area, that tension there, and this is something that's going to be important in a lot of our demonstrations that we're doing. That tension there was able to withstand the pokes because the pokes weren't just poking in one little bitty area. We had a lot of surface area. So when I push it on the thumbtacks, now my thumbtacks kind of got out of order, so we'll see if it pops it this time. So when I push it on there, I don't want to push too hard because if it pops, my hand's going right into those thumbtacks. So if you are doing this one at home, make sure you don't like slap that balloon because, yeah, a handful of thumbtacks is not nearly as much fun as it sounds. But I'm pushing pretty hard on that balloon. You can see that balloon distending. You can see that balloon squeezing. And we are not popping it even though we're on those thumbtacks. So if we were to swap it, and let's see, I'm going to move these thumbtacks. I'm going to put them on this napkin so I don't have to pick them all up later. I'm going to put the thumbtacks onto this little napkin here. Okay. And let's see what were to happen if we had one thumbtack. We'll put it over toward the side so you can see it. And if we get our balloon and whoo! Yes, yeah, it actually startled me, and that was real. I'm a little bit embarrassed, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, so that balloon popped very quickly on that one thumbtack, and now we have little shards of not only Mr. Dave breath, but a little bit of... Anyway, so yeah, the wet inside of a balloon, we won't talk about that because I don't want to think about it. So what we had happen there was this one little point was able to tear that hole, whereas our surface area was spread over a whole bunch of thumbtacks. Maybe you've seen the lay on a bed of nails kind of demonstration where people will lay on a bed of nails or walk on eggs. That's one we'll be doing in a future episode also. But what you're doing is you're spreading out that pressure, okay? So in that one, we spread out the pressure from our little thumbtack, okay? So what we're going to do now is kind of the same basic idea. okay? Before we pop our balloon, we'll do another one. We'll do a different one. We'll get back to that idea. We're going to get to our little bitty guys here, and we're going to talk about a different concept. This goes back to when we were talking about waves, okay? And again, we have a future episode coming up that's all about waves and sound waves in particular. But you see this little guy here. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides on this, and you also have 6 points on it. Okay, so now this is a fun one if you are at a birthday party or with some little guys. This is a fun one to do for little guys. There are some higher concepts there. I do want to point something out. If you have younger folk trying to blow up these balloons, you are going to insert that into the balloon. If you have younger folk that are going to be using these balloons, have someone older blowing it up because you don't want them going, right? Because that would be nuts. It was bad. It was bad. I gotta say, I really appreciate all of the folks here at the studio because I did hear a slight chuckle at that one. So I did get to use that joke. But so we have this one here. Our super big thanks to everyone working on these videos. You guys are awesome. So. We have this in here, okay? Like I said, be careful with the little guys because you don't want them to inhale that, okay? But if you are one of the older ones blowing it up, this does make a fun little toy for the younger guys as long as you can tolerate it, okay? And you'll see what I mean about tolerating it. I'm going to go ahead and blow up this balloon. Okay, so I blew up this balloon and that nut is still in there, okay? Oh, and you may hear it already started. You hear it? Okay. So what we have here, because of all of those little bumps on that little bitty nut, when we get the centrifugal force going and rolling that little nut around in the balloon, it makes contact with each of those points. So you'll start by shaking it. And when you do, that little nut is rolling around inside of that balloon. And as it's rolling around inside of that balloon and making contact, every one of those contacts, the slower you go, the lower the frequency. And then the faster you go, wait, let me get it going. You get a higher frequency. So you get that fun kind of ghost sound to it a little bit there. This is a fun little Halloween one. But what's happening there is that's making contact, and this is actually turning into a giant speaker. Okay, so our balloon is now a giant speaker because it is giving off that vibration, those pressure every time that little bitty nut hits that balloon. Okay, so this is a fun one. Like I say, if you got little guys, this is a fun one that you can demonstrate sound. You can talk about waves. You can talk about pressure with this one here. So this is a fun one just for the little guys. But like I say, you do want to be mindful of having them blow up that balloon with that little bitty nut in there. Okay, so we're going to get this guy out of the way. And we're going to get back to our kind of pressure and that distribution of pressure. So I have this one here. This balloon has something in it. It has water. It doesn't do the same fun sound thing. This one just kind of shakes around in there. But I've got some water in the bottom of this balloon. Okay. Now the water is in the bottom, as we've talked about liquid and gases and solids. The liquid is going to stay at the bottom of this balloon, as you can see there, because it's a liquid. Okay, so it is able to move around just like when we were showing those molecules move around. This is a fun one to demonstrate liquids and solids and things because that liquid we are going to see is going to just stay in the bottom of our container. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll start with a balloon that I blow up again. Okay, fill this one with Stinky Dave breath. Okay. So now we've got some Stinky Dave breath, and we are going to be using a little bit of fire, okay? Again, when you're using fire, make sure you've got an adult around. I'm going to put this little plate underneath just in case my candle drips. If you are using a candle like I am, be mindful not only of the flame here, but of where it can land. And so I'm going to go ahead and light our candle here. Okay. And I'll probably light it again because it went out. There you go. There you go. So I lit my candle. So I have fire, right? Latex is very susceptible to heat. Okay. Meaning, if I were to put this balloon over the fire, whoo, it would not only blow up the balloon, but it would blow out my candle. Okay, so we saw that what happened because that heat was in one central area. Remember that area, the distribution, because that heat was in one area, it popped that balloon very quickly. Okay, now there's something that we can do to distribute that heat, just like we distribute the pressure. When we distributed the pressure, what we did was we had a large surface of those little bitty pokey things instead of a very small surface. So we have a very small surface of our heat here that we're using. I got to say, I got the world's coolest mother-in-law. Bought me a cool little lighter that lights every time, so that's nice. So we're going to distribute that heat. And the way we're going to do that is with the water that's in the bottom of this balloon. Okay, so we saw that balloon got maybe this far before it popped, right? I can start to feel that heat there. So we're going to take this balloon and we are going to bring it to that fire there. And you're going to notice that flame is actually even touching that balloon. Woo! I got a little close to the edge. So when you get close to the edge there, instead of that water being able to distribute it, as soon as I move that balloon over, right, we were able to hit the part of the balloon that didn't have that water distributing it. And so because that water wasn't distributing that heat, poof, and it popped, and then we got water all over the place, right, including putting out our little candle. So the water was able to distribute that heat as long as that flame was right on the water. But as soon as we got to the edge of that water, boom, right, and our balloon blew up. Okay, so we were able to distribute the heat just like we were able to distribute the pressure with our little bitty thumbtacks earlier. Okay, so we're going to scooch this one out of the way. And now we're going to, let's see, we'll switch away from the distribution and we will go into another little fun way of popping the balloons. Okay. So what I have here is a lemon, okay? Now, I know when we talked about some of our corrosion with our pennies and when we did our vinegar and our pennies, if you watched that one, if not, go check that one out. But when we did that, we had a demonstration with polar and non-polar substances, okay? Now, what that means is when you have a polar substance and a non-polar substance, like if you can imagine like a magnet and plastic, okay? A magnet has got polarity. And a polar and a non-polar substance don't really get along. Now we're going to have, again, we are going to have an episode really on the polar and the non-polar, but I wanted to show you a fun one with the balloons. So, again, we're going to blow up a balloon. I have lots of color balloons here, but I'm just using the purple because I like purple. So, we'll fill this one up. Okay. And what we're going to do, I hope that balloon doesn't have a hole in it. I felt a little breeze. It may have a hole in it. I'm going to blow up another one just in case, and we'll leave that one for another demonstration. No, I've not passed out yet, so that's wonderful. Okay. All right, so I've got my balloon here. Now, we have our lemons, okay? Now, we're going to be working with a polar and a non-polar substance. Remember how I said they don't really get along? Now, this is a fun one to do if you're at a party or whatever. These are things that are readily available. You may have a lemon in your drink and balloons sitting around. This is something that's very easy to do and very fun. But when a polar hits a non-polar, okay, if I were to take this and spray water on it, well, now I have a a wet balloon, right? So the water is not what is having the effect, right? It's not a matter of it having the liquid on it, okay? But what we need is a polar and a non-polar combination. Now, the trick to this is actually in the rind of the lemon, okay? So now the juice from the lemon will work, but if you're doing this one here, you really want to pay attention to that rind, okay? Because the rind of a lemon, when you squeeze it, that's the part that you don't want to get directly into your eyeball, right? Because yeah. So when we squeeze this, we're actually going to want to squeeze the juice from the rind of the lemon, okay? And what happens is when we squeeze that juice from the rind of the lemon onto, well, hopefully, I'm getting a lot of lemon juice. I might have to try more. There we go. Onto our balloon. Let me try this again. Okay, we'll try this one. Okay, when we squeeze that juice from that rind, absolutely nothing happens. Give me a second. Let me try a different balloon. Let me see here. That one didn't do it for us. Make sure I don't have any lemon juice on my hands. I did a yellow balloon because maybe it's purple. Purple balloons don't work. Now I can smell the lemon juice on my fingers, so I'm hoping this doesn't blow up in my face. So let's see here. Now, when I'm teaching a class, if you've ever been in one of my classes, and something doesn't work, what I like to say is that went from a demonstration to an experiment, okay? So we're going to see if this one goes from demonstration to experiment. If it goes to experiment, we'll move on, no big deal. But we're going to give it a shot. So we'll try squeezing the rind onto our balloon here. And I really can't get much juice out of the rind. There we go. So that one did it quite quickly. So what I may have and what might have happened here is I bet you these other balloons that I used are not latex. I bet you I bought these other balloons for a different project. So let's try it again. Now that I did get a little bit of that rind. Really, the purple and yellow has nothing to do with it. That was not science. I was only kidding. Okay, here we go. Let's try this again. So, I'm glad that it went back to demonstration from experiment. So, we're going to try and squeeze that juice from that rind onto our balloon there. And maybe we'll just be happy with it happening the once. Woo! There we go. Now, that one does, yeah, you hear that nice big explosion there, even those balloons are a little bit smaller. That's because there was a lot of that surface area being broken all at once. So instead of our one point of contact, like happened with our candle, when our candle left the water, or with our thumbtacks, we have a large area that's breaking. That's why we get that big old boom, right? So we got a lot larger boom from that one there. Now, we're going to do one more, and this one is going to be with these skewers here, okay? I have the skewers. Let me make sure. I'm going to wipe my hands one more time because I don't want too much of that lemon rind on my hands because I'll pop the balloons unless they're the purple ones. So, we will get one of our balloons here. Now, if you have a nice sharp object, just like we were working with before, you'll see that this will go right through that balloon, right? We know that that will pop that balloon. So, what you want to do, this is kind of a fun one to do that you can do an experiment with how many you can do. But we have our skewers here, and we're going to use a little bit of this pure petroleum jelly, okay? I always call it by the brand name, but it's actually petroleum jelly if you're being fancy about it. But I'm getting my skewer, okay? And I am just dipping the tip of it into that Vaseline, pure petroleum jelly. And I am going to now stick it into my balloon, okay? What we're doing there is we're avoiding friction, okay? Because the wood causes friction, and we're going in the part of the balloon that is not as extended. The ends of your balloon, toward this end here, you've got this darker spot, and toward here, you've got a darker spot. the balloon is not actually as taut or stretched out as the other areas. Now, you can see now I can actually poke my skewer right into the balloon, and if I am lucky, I may be able to poke it right out the other side. So let's see. There you go. Now I can actually poke this skewer right through my balloon, and if you've got time, you can put more and more skewers through there, but now I have my balloon on a skewer. When I pull it out, I'm going to have these little bitty holes so it will start to deflate, right? But I have my skewer through the balloon. This is a fun one to do if you're working with some kids or with older kids, because you do have some sharp objects here. But the Vaseline, what it does is it gets rid of that friction, okay? The friction is actually what tears the balloon, just like we saw with our little bitty thumbtacks. So the friction is not able to tear our balloon. I'll go ahead and pull it all the way through. And we can pull this one's a fun little like magic trick, but we can pull our skewer through the balloon, okay? So the concepts that we did today was we talked a little bit about polarity, and that was with our lemon juice and our balloons, okay? We talked a little bit about friction, and that was with our skewers, right? So friction is when something's rubbing against something else. We reduced that friction using our pure petroleum jelly. And we talked about the displacement of pressure, and that was what we did with our thumbtacks. And we talked about the displacement of heat, and that was when we splooshed water all over the place here. This one here talked about waves, so we had a little bit about waves when we did our little balloon with the nut in it there. Okay, so if you do want to do these, some balloons, some simple science, and you can have a lot of fun at the next birthday party that you go to. So I am Mr. Dave. This is the Ray Kitty Science Project. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, science shows you matter.